Hello, everybody. This is Steve Duncan with my good friend Michael Lane here. Slim Chance 7% Club, a podcast dedicated to college baseball players and those aspiring to become one. Michael, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Facing a little bit of adversity right now, but I'm doing good.
Talk to me. What do you mean you're facing some adversity? I mean, share what you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with all of it. A couple of weeks ago, got a little discomfort in the shoulder in the middle of a game. Had to come out. Got the MRI. One doctor kind of thought it was more of a labrum tear. Then I got a second opinion from a doctor who works with the Phillies, and thankfully it's more of a bicep tendon strain, so I don't need surgery or anything like that. It's just kind of sitting out a couple more weeks and then slowly building back up.
Prior to the injury, how was your season going?
It was going great personally. It's probably the best I've thrown in a long time. Felt really good. Stuff was good. Velo was good. I felt like I was dominating, so it was good.
Good. Where last I had heard, you were 92 to 94, ticking some fives. Is that where you ended, or
Yeah.
or any other new bumps?
No, not 95 still the top, and throughout the season I was probably anywhere from 90 to 93.
Okay.
Touching 95.
Okay. So as we kind of get into a couple of things here, let's start with the current season. So we talked a little bit about what you're going through. Second round through college baseball for you. What did you see that was different in 2025 from 2024?
I guess seeing from the other teams, we're going to get into it a little bit, but a lot of bickering, small ball, but those kind of things I'm seeing watching the game, because I'm doing a little bit more of the watching it right now.
Yeah, so I've watched a good amount of college baseball from D3, D2. Haven't been to a D1 game yet, but I've watched some on TV and a lot of video. The chippiness, I mean, that seems to be it seems to be not something that wasn't very common, and now it's like every game I'm watching, the umpires either are letting more and more of it go on or to start, or it's just the demeanor of the game, right? I watched an ACC game, some video today of one that happened a couple of days ago, and you got a coach get tossed, you got a guy that hits a bomb and turns to the catcher and chirps before he leaves the box to make a statement, and then you got the second baseman. It just seems to be the energy is high, and I don't know if we're getting closer to the end of the season or if it's just the new part of the game, because I was watching it. Not too far into the season, I watched some teams that were just chippy, and I didn't understand. I didn't understand what we were being chippy about, but it was there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from the celebrations. I think it's coming a lot more popular now, and you see it all the way from the majors, and it kind of trickles down. But hitting home runs with the bat flips or strikeout celebrations, well, I'm not necessarily against. I think if you hit a home run, it's very hard to hit, so you should do a bat flip, you should celebrate. But I think that's where a lot of it stems from, and some guys don't really like it, and I think that's where a lot of the bickering kind of starts.
Yeah, I think I'm for it if it's celebratory. I'm against it if you're trying to show up, hitting a bomb and then turning to the catcher.
Yeah.
And the catcher was chirping the entire time I was in the box about what a terrible player I was. Then I hit a bomb, I might say something on the way out. And again, I don't know what's going on from just the video, but so I've seen that. I've also, to your point, I've seen a lot more small ball. And it used to be you had a lot of small ball when I grew up. It was part of the game, and then you got more into just long ball. And then, you saw T-shirts that said, when do you bunt? Never. You swing for bombs, and now I'm seeing bunts come in, situational played in, and that I like because it keeps the defense. You don't know what's happening. You can't just sit back behind the bag and wait for the ball to be smashed at you. You better be able to get up and get that short one and make a play. So that's something I like that I'm seeing that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's like teams recognizing what kind of teams they are. Like for example, in the NEC, like it's not the SEC, ACC where you use a ton of power hitters and guys hitting bombs. Like these teams have to kind of utilize the small ball games. They got to steal bags. They got to move runners over because they're not always going to hit that double in the gap or game tying home run.
Manufacture what you can for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about not just what's been happening, but the seasons are getting close to the end here in the next month. Some teams in the next couple of weeks. So over the next 1 to 4 months. So let's say now until we get to July, coming into August. What is your plan? What is Michael Lane going to be doing? And we'll talk a little about maybe what we think college players or high school players preparing for college should be doing.
Yeah, so for me personally, right now, with coming off of this little bit of an injury, I won't be playing summer ball this summer.
Okay.
I'm gonna take my time building back up and making sure everything's still feeling good and that I don't have any setbacks. And then once I get built up to where I'm able to throw high intent and all that sort of thing, I'm going to be training at BPC in New Jersey. So I'll do that for June, July, and August, and then roll right into the fall.
Okay. We have talked to our showcase players preparing for college, and things that I have said to them over the next 1 to 4 months, to include our college players. Find a summer team. You can't put the brakes on, put the car in park, and try to come back in September and think you're going to be ready. So staying active through the summer months, find that team, and then be prepared to get out there and play. Look for NIL opportunities. I mean, that's the big buzzword, and there are ones out there, and it doesn't matter what level. Just find one if you can that works for you, and then figure out how you're gonna help your image, help your name, and help the business that's willing to do that with you, or the entity that's doing it. And then the last thing we have spent a lot of in-season weight room workouts with our showcase and high school players. I know you guys did it, college players. We shift from maintenance in season, and I think that as the season ends, you've got to get back to growth mode, bigger, faster, move heavy stuff quickly. And I think that's something I'm recommending to players over the next 1 to 4 months. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, like there should definitely be some weight room stuff going on in season, but definitely switching that from, because you go through all winter and whatnot of, developing and working on your stuff, and then the season hits and you switch to competitive mode where you think about other stuff, holding on runners, just like all the little details of the game.
Yep.
Sometimes you even get lost in the developing side, and you see guys velo sometimes go down in season because maybe they're not in that developed mindset where they're focusing on their mechanics and mobility and the strength. So definitely switching back into that kind of mindset and developing, and it's like you also have the summer ball like you talked about, or just training. So I think for pitchers it really depends like what your season was like, workload wise, like how many innings you threw, and then what you need, right? If you're a guy that doesn't have real good stuff, doesn't throw very hard, then maybe playing summer ball isn't the best option, right? Maybe go train somewhere, but actually train. Don't just sit around for 3 months and do nothing and toss the ball every once a couple days. Like, you actually have to go train. But if you're a guy that has good stuff but maybe didn't get the innings he wanted during the season, then go play summer ball. So I think it really gets individualized with the summer ball thing. But definitely these next couple months need to be switched to, developing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you played a lot, and the stuff needs to be worked on, you tweak it. If you didn't play a lot, and you just need more reps, again, those are different situations. And if you didn't play much at all, and it was because your velo was close but not quite there, your stuff was close but not quite there, then maybe you need to spend time developing, whether it's BPC or tread or whomever, working with you guys, you and E, to get better and to develop and be specific about what you're doing. I know that's a big thing that I hear you guys talking with the guys you're working with in our program on being specific, being intentional, having a plan. What are you doing with today's session, whether it's the training or you're throwing? Like, what are you being purposeful for? What's the intent of what you're doing today when you leave, knowing you accomplished whatever the goal was coming in? So I think that's another big thing for players to stay focused on for the next couple months as well.
Yeah, definitely, and that's how I like to view things too. Is like, where do I want to be, and then kind of develop a plan to get there. And I think the summer is a great time for that. I think a lot of people kind of misuse it and don't use that time wisely, and don't really use it to get better. And I think even if you are playing summer ball, there's definitely things you can do to develop while you're playing. Whether it be, I need to work on my changeup, so I'm going to throw it a lot in summer ball, even though if it was a game that mattered, maybe I want to throw it. That sort of thing. So making sure you're still developing, even if you are playing summer ball or you're not.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the weight room topic we brought up a couple times here. So, college weight room. What does well? And I know it's different for position players and pitchers, but talk to me about what your in-season weight room looked like, for example.
Yeah, so we had team lifts 2 days a week, but with me throwing on Fridays, they didn't necessarily align with the days I would lift.
Yep.
But thankfully, our strength coach was super flexible in allowing me to do the things I needed to do. But I would lift 2 times during the week in season. One would be after an outing, so usually the day after an outing. I go through all like my mobility correctives where I'm getting my range of motion back everywhere, and just doing really a long, extensive mobility routine. And then I'll lift on that day too, where it's more strength focused, slow eccentrics, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And then on my bullpen day on Tuesday is when I'll do a fast twitch workout, where it's more lightweight, super explosive, more plyometrics, that sort of thing.
Okay. We have a twice a week with our showcase players. So they come in. We're in what we call the maintenance phase in season right now. So we're shifting back from high, not heavy, but high weight, low rep, to the second outing is lower weight, high reps, quick explosiveness. So we're trying to get both of that happening in the short time that we have with those guys coming in, and I feel like we're seeing a really impressive amount of success. And it used to be, what I watched with our pitchers and the dominance that they had on the mound, and our hitters usually started to come into their own right around summertime, and it wasn't necessarily showing up on the high school field. Not that they were doing bad; they were still probably the top players on their high school team, but you didn't see some of the explosiveness that I'm seeing now. I mean, like I said, last week alone, we had 5 or 6 of our guys go yard just last week, and 2 of them were freshmen in high school. So seeing that kind of explosiveness with our hitters has been exciting for me to see the power shift. I think we have one of our guys that's got 5 or 6 home runs on the season, and they're just barely at the halfway mark. And if you looked at him, you would never accuse him of being a power. As a matter of fact, he's the leadoff hitter for his high school team. So that's exciting to see that kind of work.
Yeah, and I think I know who you're talking about. And that guy, he's one of those guys who isn't real big, but super fast twitchy. He rotates well, explosive, and that comes from a lot of stuff that he does in your guys' weight room program and that sort of thing. He does it well. And I think a lot of the hitters in your high school system right now just are looking a lot more physical from when I was there in high school. A lot of them are, probably a lot closer to 200 pounds and just big, solid athletes than before, and I think it's definitely showing on the field. Yeah,
we had one of our guys last week. 2-part to this comment. He's the 4-hitter playing a team. They had guys on first and second. They decided to walk the 3-hitter to get to the 4-hitter, and first pitch he goes yard, grand salami. And the neat part of that was he's a guy that comes in and is in our hitting lab, and I moved one of our other players who was a freshman from working with one of our other guys into working with this junior who's 6'3", 210-pound lefty that just can mash a ball. and bringing this freshman in, it's forcing him. You know, you're either going to look way different than this guy that you're in here with, or you're going to start picking it up and trying to figure it out. And he's had literally 2 sessions with this player working together. And his mom sends me a text last week, hey, you know, he hit his first home run ever in high school, and you know, went yard, 3-run bomb. And so it's fun to watch that stuff. It's fun watching these players develop. And then, like you said, you know, we're watching our guys go 6'3", 6'4", and creeping up to 190, 195, and it's not that dewy weight. It's weight room stuff, and it's exciting to see. So
yeah, I think that's something that is super undervalued is the people you're training around with. Like you said, that freshman and the older guy, like the people you're training around with plays a huge impact in it. You know, trying to always compete with each other.
Yep.
It really pushes you to the next level.
You quickly forget that whoever you're with is older, is whatever like it just goes out of your mind, and you compete. You know, when you're a freshman and they're a junior, and so we've spent the first, I guess, 3 months with the program and had guys together, and then in April I shifted it up and moved some guys based on who I thought they would benefit being around more, and we're already seeing the results of just that change. So that's fun to see. Speaking of you know, the weight room and the size, we brought on a guy recently, a freshman, 6'3.5", and weighed 155, and it reminded me of some guys that we've had in our program before. There's a couple 8th graders that we have right now that are 6'3", 150, 155, and you know, one of them you work with as a pitcher. They've got the size, but they're not living in the weight room, and they're starting now to come in the weight room with our showcase guys. And I'm interested and excited to see what happens come fall and next spring with a year under their belt of being around our guys in the weight room, and just seeing, you know, fast twitch guys that are super athletic, but you know, they're 14, they're 15, they just haven't been acclimated to what we do with a lot of our players. And I'm excited to see what happens when they pack on some weight, some good weight, and how that athleticism plays through off the mound and at the plate.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a cool part of coaching that I'm starting to realize now is, you know, watching guys develop over time, you know, from where they're starting off and then where they're finishing. It's always cool to see the develop that they're putting in. And, yeah, I think the weight room and putting on weight is a huge part of it, and just staying athletic too. You know, a lot of these guys are, you know, these young guys have like newfound height that they just grow out of nowhere, and sometimes they can get a little awkward. Like I know one guy I'm working with, he's a little bit awkward. I can tell he's kind of coming into himself a little bit more. So it's cool watching him week by week progress and get better. Yeah,
that's the coaching side. I hope that continues to burn inside of you. I know I went through that with E when he transitioned from player to coach, and you know, he never thought that he'd want to be in this route. It just wasn't him. And, you know, it probably took about 6 months of being around it before the fire was burning hot inside of him. And he just was like, give me guys, let me develop them. It's very exciting to see the results of those players, their smiles, and know you played a small role in it. So
definitely.
Let's kind of transition over to some rule changes. So 2025-26 collegiately. Division one of the big rules that goes into effect, rosters go from 37 to 34, but scholarships, now full rides go up to 34. And I know that sounds like, hey, great, you know, a lot more players, but it's still a business, right? So the finances have to be there. The vast majority of schools will not be offering 34 full rides. I know a 7 or 8 D1 schools that I've talked to have said they're not moving. They're staying where they are with their scholarships. That's all they can afford. SEC, Big Ten, ACC, you know, those Power Fives, maybe they're different, right? So they probably were doing 37 or whatever the max was, 18, but that they were allowed to do before on 37 players. Going to 34 probably won't be a big deal with them. So I think that's a big change. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the biggest effect of that is going to be, guys getting cut. So you're going to see, I think, a lot of mess in the transfer portal this year, and I think you're going to see a lot of guys that are going to enter and get a lot less love than they're expecting. Just because I think it's harder than ever now to go to a lot of these schools because they're already cutting kids. So it's not like they're just going to fill their roster with anybody. They got to be real selective with who they bring in. And I think it's going to trickle all the way down. And I think lower levels of D1s and D2s and D3s, I think, are going to get a lot more competitive as well.
Yeah, I think two things on that comment. One, I agree. It's going to trickle down. You're going to see D3s that are already extremely talented have access to some more players that they maybe not have had access to before.
Yeah.
That whole D1 or bust mentality is really going to explode on some people.
Yeah.
High school kids, I've said it for the last 2 years. Every year I keep saying for the last 2 years, man, this is the hardest high school senior or junior recruiting class. It's just the hardest. Well, it's going to get harder. Now that they've cut down rosters, it's going to be harder to go D1, especially with how advanced the portal is, how accessible players can move without having penalties, NIL and being able to pay players. Like, it's just a completely different game and at this point. And so high school players, man, you can't be missing on any metric. And I know we train our guys to know sub-7 on the 60, really sub-6.9 to be even considered. And it's not like you just have to tick one of these things. You better be ticking all three. And what I talk about is the 60 times got to be right, the exit velo's got to be right, and the throwing velo's got to be right. Those three things have to be a starting point, and then they want to see body movement. I mean, they don't care how good your body moves if you're throwing 77 miles an hour or you can hit a ball 210 feet. That doesn't matter if you're fluid. So you got to check those first three big metrics, and then they want to look at your body movement to see if it lines up with what they're looking for. So that's one big thing. The second thing is just the ability to go in the portal and move like never before, and watching guys go in the portal. We had an experience with a guy, not a baseball player, he's a football player that I work with, and he got bad info. He had an agent telling him, get in the portal, 6 figures, I'm signing you. This is a kid that was 2-time all-conference football player, going into his last year on a very good team that was FBS, and he was talked into going in the portal. And here we are. It probably wasn't the right, well, he's going to have to figure it out now, but it probably wasn't the best advice. And some of these agents just telling guys to get in the portal because they're hoping that there's a check and that they can take 30% of it. It's unfortunate. And I think both of those things play out all at the same time, makes it a very, very volatile and difficult, challenging time for high school players coming out and younger college players.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think especially those high school kids, there's not going to be too much projects anymore in college. Like, let's take this kid. He has a good frame. We'll see what we can turn him into. I think, those spots are going to be taken. Why not take a junior who's played for 2 years and dominated? So I think those spots are going to fill up. So it's important now more than ever for those high school kids to be ready to play right away.
It's almost going to be like the JUCOs, the D2s, and D3s are going to be a great way for high school players to get onto a team, get some reps, show they can play. And if you're not one of the top echelon of high school coming out, you're going to have to go the portal route. You're going to have to go into college, at wherever you can go, play, prove that you can play, prove that you can get bigger, faster, stronger, and then let a bigger division team take a swipe of you if you will go in the portal, as opposed to sitting around and waiting for an opportunity. They're just not going to have the roster spot for you, and they're probably not going to put their focus on it unless you're bringing all of those intangibles that they're looking for, because they can find a sophomore that has 3 or 4 years left of eligibility, especially with some of those rules that we're going to talk about here in a second on D2, on what some pitchers can do, which is, where schools are following players anyway.
Yeah, I think it almost seems like all these small, mid-major schools are basically becoming JUCOs, where guys are just going there for a year or two,
Yep.
putting up good numbers, or then they're out. They're going to go someplace that they'd rather be at a bigger school. So that's definitely what it's turning into.
Another rule. So D2 approved where for freshmen starting in 2025 fall for the 2026 spring season, if you play in less than 30% of your team's allotted games or eligible games, you can redshirt as a freshman. So, it sounds like you can get players that get a lot of reps, 10, 12 games, and have a redo, and the season doesn't count. More importantly, you could have that stud arm. You could have the Michael Lane that comes in, throws, pitches in 12 or 13 games, and still have 4 more years of eligibility for college. I think that's a big rule change for Division II.
Yeah, definitely, and I think a lot of people are probably going to use it to their advantage, and be selective in the games they throw that freshman year to potentially have another shot at another year of eligibility.
Yep.
That's definitely a major rule change that I just found out about.
And then the last one was, I guess it all started with the young man at Vandy. You had the 2020, the JUCO rule. So in 2026, players that had 1 season or more of JUCO, they get that 1 year of eligibility that they can use in 2026. So I know there's a local player that I know that's around our organization that found out a month ago that he wasn't sure if he was going to have it, he wasn't sure if he was coming back, and then decided that he was going to utilize that and come back next year and have that extra year. That's another big one. I think you got JUCO players that get that 5th year even if they've already played their 4.
Yeah, I have a buddy at another school who has a bunch of JUCO guys on his team, and he said they all have that extra year, and they're all coming back. So definitely a major rule change. It kind of seems like everybody's getting 6 years of college baseball nowadays.
Yeah. I think there was a guy down in Florida somewhere that I think I read about that had 9 years with some medical red shirts, a regular red shirt, the COVID year. So that's I don't know what you do with 9 years of college. My parents would have lost their mind, but if it's scholarship, I guess somebody's footing the bill.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of wrap up with some exciting news of schools that our players have gone to, actively stay on top of our players. 3 schools, Frostburg State having a great season, 27-12 the last I checked. Goldie Beacom at 30-12, first in the conference, 17 nationally ranked, and then East Stroudsburg at 26-7, ranked number 14 in the country. And then one of the coaches that has been around our program, I guess for about a year or so, watching our players. He's got a couple of our guys on his roster now. He took over a D3 program a few years ago that was 1-36, and I just checked before we hopped on here. He's almost 500. They're I think 17-18 is their current record. But man, what a turnaround! I think they've got 6 or 7 games left. I think they're all very winnable. But man, Albright College, if Coach Perry can get that thing turned around and they finish above 500, man, that'll be exciting. And I know we've got a couple more players in our 25 class that are heading up there for next year. So, those schools I get excited about because they're actively around our program. They've got some of our players on their roster. And seeing our players get there and be a part of very successful, high-performing programs is exciting to see. So
yeah, definitely, it's cool looking at guys I've played with in the organization and see what they're doing at different schools. And I find myself nowadays checking a lot of teams' different stats and looking at everybody else's school. So it's definitely cool to see.
Yeah. Well, as always, Michael, it's been great. I hope the healing and the rehab goes well for you.
Thank
I look forward to seeing you back on the mound, hopefully sometime in the fall. Maybe even over the summer at BPC.
Yeah.
And thank you everybody for tuning in and listening to the podcast. We will hopefully have another one here posted here shortly. I'm Steve Duncan, Michael Lane. Thanks again for the Slim's Chance 7% Club. Have a great day.